I know, right?
Yes, this camera.
Jeez, just left me over there.
You might have to point the camera towards that table.
No.
Come on, you guys.
Is there a sign in over there, or is it coming around?
Yeah.
You want to go more?
Yeah. Good evening, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Steve Nolan, Title VI Director for Sisseton Public School. And I guess we're joined together here tonight, having our yearly public hearing.
Self-progressive, would you mind starting with some of the demographic information and enrollment information for the district?
Want me to just review this?
Yeah.
So this year, enrollment, official enrollment for this school year is a total of 918. In kindergarten, we had 77 and 42 Native American, 20 non-Native, and 15 two or more races. First grade, 43 Native American, 19 non-Native, and 11 two or more races, for a total of 73. In second grade, 35 Native American, 21 non-Native, and 21 two or more races, for a total of 77. In third grade, 39 Native American, 17 non-Native, and 14 two or more races, for a total of 70. Fourth grade, 27 Native American, 29 non-Native, and 14 two or more races, for a total of 70. In fifth grade, there were 39 Native American, 26 non-Native, and 10 two or more races, for a total of 75 students. Sixth grade, 29 Native American, 24 non-Native, and 5 two or more races, for a total of 58 students. Seventh grade, 45 Native American, 27 non-Native, and 10 two or more races, for a total of 82 students. And eighth grade, 39 Native American, 27 non-Native, and 4 two or more races, for a total of 70 students. And in the high school, ninth grade, 77 Native American, 24 non-Native, and 7 two or more races, for a total of 108. In 10th grade, 35 Native American, 23 non-Native, and 1 two or more races, for a total of 59. 11th grade, 25 Native American, 20 non-Native, and 1 two or more races, for a total of 46. And our seniors this year, 18 Native American, 32 non-Native, and 3 two or more races, for a total of 53. Percentages, there's a table there for ethnicity or race. And this year, we have Hispanic students at 7.32%. American Indian or Alaskan Native, 54.12%. This is for our total district. Asian students at 0.41%, and Black or African American students at 0.21%. White students at 25% or 25.05%, and the two or more races at 12.89%.
And then you will notice there's a little bit of a discrepancy between our official numbers and the school building orders. The school building orders are based on common unique enrollment. So if we have students that enroll during the course of the school year or leave during the course of the school year, that's where we have some of those shifts in numbers. Where our official enrollment in the end of September was 918, but we've had 970 unique students enroll in the district. That includes preschool, and that also includes our early childhood students that are served in the district. So during the 1920 school year, we did have state assessments. We do not have our state assessment results, but the assessment results for the 2018-19 school year are listed. And then it does give historical information on our Smarter Balance assessments from 15-16 into 16-17, 17-18, and 18-19, and this is all found in the statewide report as well. So one of the things to report on as well, and I apologize, I'm looking at this now thinking I should have put page numbers on this. There is a listing of some of the services available to our students within the Sisseton School District right after the academic achievement information. It's not a comprehensive list, but just a listing of some of the programming that we do offer for our students. After that listing, it talks about our Title I budget summary for the 2021 school year, and it is our final allocation for the 2021 school year is $1,328,779. That does not include Title VI, as that is a separate fund. Our impact aid budget summary for the 2021 school year is $3,571,791. And our federal impact aid funds are used to support our general education operating expenses of the school district. Dr. Gressick, would you just give a quick overview of the federal title funds and what they are just generally used for?
Title I funds are generally used for supplementing the instruction, so we do pay for some staff out of Title I funds. One way we utilize that at our elementary and middle schools is that we are school-wide Title I schools in those buildings, and we have interventionists who are special ed teachers but are paid partly out of Title I funding to provide support to our students on IEPs, but to other students as well as intervention services for them. We do have a few teachers that are called class size reduction teachers to add another teacher to a grade level, for example, so that our class sizes are smaller than they would be otherwise. Other things that Title I fundings do is to pay for professional development for our staff and to pay for curriculum development, to pay for outside support for students like tutoring, summer school, just to name a few things, I guess.
And then also listed on that page, give a general idea of the number of staff that are funded by those different types of title programs and federal programs and some of the things that are identified within that. Dr. Gressick, would you just speak briefly on the next page, which is the Students with Disabilities Statistical Profile?
Yes, so our students with disabilities, total numbers are 234, which is higher. We're higher percentage-wise than the state average. You can see there that we have the breakdown of numbers: Hispanic 17, multiple races 25, Native American 158, and white 34. You can see how it breaks down in grade levels, and One thing that is a positive is you can see on the educational setting that most of our students with disabilities are in that 100 setting, which means they are in the least restrictive environment or the general classroom with support and modification to help them be successful. Then you can see numbers that we have starting at age 3, so this includes our early childhood special ed students before they come to school. And then as well, it goes up to age 21, so we still have some students in services beyond the high school level. And then you, of course, see the breakdown of female and male in special ed services. Do you have any questions about that?
I do. When I look at the number of Native Americans there, it looks like they're proportionately over-identified, just due to the fact that you have 54% of Native Americans in the school. I would think that the special education numbers would be something that falls in line of that. Is there, and then I also see predominantly males are also, and those are two of the most common characteristics or aspects of over-identification. So, and then if you're, most of them are in the education setting, so that tells me it's a little less than, significant cognitive disabilities. So is there a predominance of Native Americans being over-identified? Start there.
So do we have more Native? Yes, but we're not to the level of disproportionality. The state checks on us on all of those every year to see now. So yes, we would, if we calculated it out, there would be more Native than white students or other areas students identified than just the 1-to-1 ratio, but not enough yet to be considered disproportionate. Because like I said, they review that for us in every category every year.
And so what is that percentage that's considered disproportionate?
Off the top of my head, I think it's somewhere around a little bit over 3-to-1 more before you bump into that disproportionality. I can get it for you. I just didn't come prepared to tell you that tonight. But.
Thank you. And then is there comments on the male to female gender there?
I don't know. I can't say that we've done any study into why that would happen. But that might be an interesting thing for us to take a look at, why that is true.
Thank you.
Is your 3 to 5-year-olds, is that just Sisseton Public School, or is that who you guys service?
That's who we serve. So within our district boundaries, if a child is identified at 3 years old in need of services, that is the Sisseton School District's child until the time that they're able or they're old enough to go to school. Then if they would choose to go to Teoshpazina or Enemy Swim, then they go under that school. But until that time, every child that's 3 to 5 years old is under the responsibility of the Sisseton School District. So we serve children at the tribal Head Starts, at daycares, at Northeast Head Start, wherever they are in our district. As long as they're a resident, then they're our responsibility.
Dr. Gressett, one other question is, and I see your numbers as they are aging up, they're still quite high. So are they working, do you see your numbers where they're working out of some of their impediments the earlier they're getting identified?
Well, where I think we see that would be from early childhood into once they turn 6 and we have to reevaluate. We do see some kids
then not be eligible for services at that point. You know, hopefully, if we're identifying correctly, we shouldn't see people testing out of IEPs very much, because a true disability is a disability for your life. So, you know, sometimes I think where you might have more numbers, maybe there wasn't a true disability, and something else caused that. And we're supposed to do the best that we can to not, you know, like, you can't say that a child has a learning disability if they haven't had an opportunity to learn. But sometimes they still get into special ed under a learning disability, even though maybe it was truly because they didn't have an opportunity to learn. So that's how I think it gets skewed a little bit sometimes. But if we're doing it correctly and we're truly identifying disabilities correctly, we shouldn't see kids test out really very often.
And then you work with the Title I and the staffing.
Yeah.
And then I see, and I just flip back to the other page. So what is, for our Title VI, we have how many staff there?
4.
4? Okay. And then they go 2 in high school, or 1 in high school, 1 in middle school, and 2 in...
1 middle school, and then
2 in West Side.
elementary.
That just makes sense. And then, and as far as your Title I and all your other programs, what are your direct support of Indian education? What are those direct supports?
Of Title I services?
Or Title I, Title VI,
Okay.
those direct supports.
Well, Title VI services has a lot to do with helping us with attendance, making sure that we're knowing where kids are and getting them to school, that they didn't get to school. So there's services like that. Also supplies for students that they can make available for them. Go ahead.
We also provide transportation after school for tutoring.
Yeah.
We offer help with tutoring in school for reading, math, as needed in the schoolrooms. And we also, as Dr. Dresser stated, we give out supplies as needed. We're on the high school side. We also work with the kids, Sioux Voices Club. We do fundraising. We work at the games. We basically just work with that group. And also we kind of try to be there to support the kids as much as possible as far as getting them here and their attendance every day. Try to find out where they're at. If they need a ride to school, we go get them, make sure they get here.
Thank you.
Title I services, or direct services, would be like providing interventions, tutoring, summer school, you know, anything that we can to expand on our instruction to improve achievement in reading and math.
What do you have for tutoring available for students? Because I had a cruciate call me and just asked for all kinds of things here, so.
So tutoring is, I don't know if I can say, but tutoring is often after school.
By who, what days, that kind of stuff?
Teachers, most of the time, and when it's the most effective, I think if it's their direct teacher anyway, and often that's who it is. Occasionally, we've had some paras, like that training to do the Barton tutoring, also stay and do some of that. But it's typically general ed teachers or special ed teachers that are keeping kids after school and giving them one-on-one tutoring.
So there's no per se program, like they can stay after on Tuesday and Wednesday? Or,
Well,
I mean,
kind of,
Tuesdays and Thursdays?
But there is kind of, like the middle school always tells their parents, we can do tutoring Monday, Tuesday, Thursdays.
any Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. You can stay for tutoring. But the most effective, it seems, and the most efficient is when they're making that direct plan with the parent and the student and the teacher and say, okay, I'm going to stay today, or I'm going to stay these days every week, and that student is always there with that same teacher. That seems to work the best.
Thank you.
Any other questions about that information so far? And again, if anybody has questions, just stop us and we can stop at that point and address anything.
Can I ask you about the data part?
Yes.
You didn't report on having homeless. You don't have any homeless?
We do, I don't have it in this report. That is a number I could provide to you, I just don't have it on this sheet.
And then how many students do you still have virtual?
Can the principals respond to that?
The high school share, we have about 44.
My last count was 23.
Middle school is roughly 36.
A little over 100. Thank you. And then, Dr. Meyer, how many Native American staff do you have in here? You got 54% Native students, so how many Native American staff do you actually have working in the school system?
I don't have a number for that. We haven't typically tracked ethnicity, but I can get that number for you. I just don't have that right offhand. Anything else? Steve, would you mind reviewing the Title VI application?
Okay.
The Title VI application, the allocation, the initial allocation is $130,854. Start date July 1st, 2020. Grant award end date is June 30th, 2021. Total Indian student count 639, total student enrollment 971.
Tammy, what page are you on? I am on the page that looks like this.
So is there a difference in the report of the statistics with Dr. Gressa? She said like 54.12 Native American. On this one, on the EC, it says it's 66%. Why the big difference?
So some of the discrepancy in that is based on a vast majority of our students identified as 2 or more races are also.
And so that's included in here?
That is included in it, yep. So that student count of 639, that would include any students that are classified as 2 or more races that identify as Native American. Yes.
Thank you.
So
So
that's
we
where-
really should be looking at 66%. Yeah.
Right, so when you look at the attendance, those attendance numbers, I did split down that way, and then also the official enrollment, it is split out that way, but then when I pull the information out of our Infinite Campus system that gives those percentages, that's how they're identified in there. So any student that's identified as 2 or more races, we go through individually to determine which category to place that student in for that official enrollment number.
Did you gather data about how many kids get tutored?
Yes.
Is that in there somewhere about the number of kids that have gotten tutoring?
I don't believe it's in this document. We did not offer tutoring, let me take that back. It is not in this document. It is typically something that we identify in our IPP hearing in August. So that is information that I would have probably for last year and the years prior. It's just not in this document at this point in time. So our teachers during the course of the year, they're asked to identify all of the students that they're tutoring, the hours of service, any of that information, and we can compile that at the end of the school year. So that is information that we are gathering.
And so when you offer tutoring, is it part of a teacher's job to do that after school, or do you pay for tutors to come in and tutor?
It is any time that a teacher spends tutoring a student after 4 o'clock is for additional compensation to that teacher.
And what line item does it come out of? Is it just part of like the high school programs, or is it a
Yes.
separate line item?
It's not a separate line item. It would just come out of that high school program if it's high school, middle school if it's middle school, or elementary if it's elementary. So it's all goes within that.
Is it somewhere aggregated though, so you can tell how much you're spending on tutoring?
Not without hand calculations. No. No, I could do some rough estimates, but not without some hand calculations, because it isn't identified differently in a staff member's pay. We have that data, it's just not probably the easiest to get to.
And how do you access tutoring if you're a parent? Is it promoted widely, or do you have to know that it exists, or what's the?
I'll probably defer to my principals to answer some of those questions.
Okay.
Right now, we have tutoring set up. In fact, I was just looking for something I just sent to Dr. Meyer about a week ago. We've done tutoring a lot of different ways, but to be honest with you, this year, how we are accessing this is our teachers, and Dr. Gressa addressed this appropriately earlier, is It's based on need, and our teachers work individually with our parents and students, and we set up individual times with our students is what works. And then all stakeholders are part of that. There have been times at Westside Elementary where we used to have the Monday, Tuesday, Thursday as a Title I school-wide school. We've had programs like that in place. Something that we do have is we have our Westside after-school program, and so that maybe is a part of that process at the elementary school. What we see as working right now is this. I have teachers that are working strategically and specifically to make sure that we're minding the gaps for our students, especially now in the setting that we're in, for students based on data that need that extra time after school. So they contact the parent, they set up the times, they stay after with them, and they work with them in a very safe environment. After school is what's working. And they work with the certified teacher, and I expect that to be by the certified teacher. And that's what's working at my school right now. And we're just seeing growth and change with that. And anytime it's asked, when we have meetings or needs, we offer that. It's not a free-for-all. It's very specific and instructional and intentional for students to get the help that they need. So it's working. That's what's happening at Westside Elementary this year. Is there any further?
At the high school, it's pretty much individual need, and they can make arrangements with the teachers to be here after school, which we do have. More students I've seen this year leaving the building at 4:30, 5 o'clock after going and getting some help from the teachers. So that's a good thing. And we have students that come in from time to time, even when we're here on PD days, they come in and schedule some opportunities to work with staff, which we've seen more of this year, which is a positive thing. And we also like to have, we have academic enrichment, which is we try to identify students that work with certain staff members in a positive manner, and we try to put them in a smaller structured study hall so the teachers can work with them during that class period, that 15-minute period of time. And that works. We found that to be effective.
At the middle school, we also have tutoring available on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays, like we described before. Like Dr. Millen's building, we do have a strategic way of targeting the tutoring with students that need it. So as needs are identified, certified teachers are communicating with the students and the families, and then they schedule the day and time that they're going to come. We also utilize the title program to transport students when it's required. And often we'll have that at the middle school because they're not open to drive yet. We'll see students transported with the title. It's very strategic.
I would share too that if there's any parent that wants additional support from their teachers or needs additional support from the school, to have them contact the school so we can go ahead and get that set up. Title's kind of our right hand as far as getting our students home from those tutoring sessions. And it's just been a great partnership to be able to provide transportation to them as well at the end of the day.
Do you guys offer any advanced placement classes at the high school?
We have some students that if they meet certain criteria, they are allowed to sign up to take some of those courses.
And do they go through virtual learning at the university?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then Dr. Meyer, you skipped the objectives page here. And I know that the first one is what, reading, the second one's math, of course, and I know you have those assessments and stuff, but
So the 2021 goals, objectives, and
Yep,
intervention strategies.
yep, it was just in front of my EC grant in my packet, I don't know. Where it's going. Looks like this. So on this, and what I really wanted to ask you about was the socio-emotional needs and how are they met? And so I looked at the goals there, and talks about improve school classroom environment and develop a culture for learning. And then it lists a bunch of stuff, but I think some of this stuff isn't even happening with COVID. And so how are we meeting the socio-emotional needs for that? Because some of our kids are even more trauma because of COVID.
Going to ask the buildings to address a little bit of that too, Dr. Bell, would you start?
And that could be anybody. I mean, we're looking at how are those needs met?
So,
Yeah.
and I can share too.
Sick parents, kids trying to feed themselves, things like that going on.
And as a generalization, we have actually brought in some additional contracted services to observe in our classrooms, especially at the elementary level, that we've had in place for 2 years now, with some reading support and some other instructional supports. And those coaches are also identifying maybe some areas of need within the generalized classroom to make sure that we're providing an effective instruction for our students. We do have counselors at each of our buildings. So we do have a high school counselor, a middle school counselor, and an elementary counselor. And then they have educational programming available for students as well. We've also been doing some extended contracted services with another school psychologist, that if we are identifying that there is a student that we're maybe having some concerns about how to best address their learning needs within the school environment, working hand in hand with that school psychologist too, who's different than the school psychologist we have for our special ed program, but using that individual to help us identify how we can offer individualized supports for students that may need that as well.
Do the teachers have access to that school site coming in? I mean, how often does that happen?
She's readily available. She comes in on our PD days. She's available by email and phone, and available by Zoom, come on site. She's been a great support. And then offered professional development based on data that she's been collecting with us along the way.
And then moving into next year too, we're looking at trying to determine how many days we can bring her in to even build that more so into the next school year.
I'm sure we could tie that to CARES Act.
Yes, but to get her here more, because she's just
Yeah.
been a valuable asset. So that's something we're working on right now too, is to try to increase our availability to her, to support us and our students. Yep.
Do you have any peer mentor groups or just talking circles or anything else beyond that? Because I know how thin this level of people are. They're stretched in our community, and sometimes we just need a little, we need more. I mean, we need more. Is there anything else that drops that level of education down where we can find more people there? Is there anything possible with your CARES Act that has come in or coming in, one of the two, that we could tie to some more supports for like that with our school?
Yes, potentially so. And I know even I've talked with Brian in our title program about who can we bring in to help some after-school programs and things like that too. It's sometimes just hard finding people.
I think that's a key point, though, is consistency with people. One thing that we do have going at the elementary school is our counselor does a phenomenal job with our Harmony program. And that's a daily class. Not every class gets that every day, but it is a guidance class that goes through our school. And just the support that we have. I want to say this, and I want to say this carefully, but kids thrive when they can be in school and when they can have breakfast and lunch and snack and they can be with their friends and have in place in our setup right now that we are meeting the needs of our kids. And when we know the need, we meet the need. And I know there's resources, and I know there's always more things that we can do, but it's like what Dr. Meyer just said, we have to have the right people, and we have to be consistent. Otherwise, that's not always the best situation for our kids either. And so, we're just very careful at making some of those decisions. It's not always about more things, it's about the right program and the right situation for each child, and consistency is key. And if there's anything I've learned from 2020 to 2021, and I've even heard it from parents, I've heard it from students, is they've even shared with me, Dr. Moen, I love to be in my class. I love to just be with my family in my class. We used to always move around a lot and regroup and group and regroup, and that's always been an educational philosophy that we think that's best for most. Not saying it's not, but something that we're learning is that consistency is key. Staying with their teacher, staying with their family, they play with their same kids, they're learning and growing in ways that is probably very traditional school, and we're seeing some gains that I don't know if we've seen in years. And so I'm going to celebrate that, and I'm going to give our school an applause for that, and we're going to move forward and continue doing what we're doing because it's best practice, and not just get more things, but make right choices. So for our kids.
So when you read the goal number 3, it says address the social emotional needs of K-12 students and their families. So how are you really identifying what those needs are? And, you know, it just talks about attendance at events. I mean, where's our real measure of what that means and how we're really effective at it? It's because those things that you're saying are right on, but they're not here. I mean, they're not measurable here anywhere. And we're talking about developing a culture of curriculum, you know, and the evaluation of them is just attendance rates. Well, how effective were they? Attendance rates don't tell us how effective this is. So, you know, if I have to make a recommendation, I think that we really should take a look at that goal as a leadership team and see how you can garner. I don't know if you do any school surveys of parents, culture surveys, classroom surveys, things like that. You know, what is that? And how can we better address what that is and the intent of the goal? Because that's huge, because that ties into helping improve reading and math. You know, and you're so right about those connections and those ties, and that's huge. And when you talk about patterns and that continuity of the measurements and things of how those relationships are, those are solid, but that's not what the goal. You know, the goal is the goal here, and let's figure out the action steps. You know, how can we better define that?
So one of the things that was just recently completed in all of the different buildings too, and actually we met and discussed this yesterday. All of the buildings have completed a comprehensive needs assessment within the last several years. And a part of that is that we have to do student surveys, we have to do staff surveys, we have to do parent surveys, and we have to get all of that information. So for example, the middle school next year, the parent survey is going to take place during parent-teacher conferences. So that's something that we already have set in our time frame. The high school had to do 2 separate parent surveys last year. One is for career and tech ed, and the other one was for the generalized instructional program. So, and those then become part of the school improvement plans, which are found later in the packet as well.
So is that what derived the goal itself to be developed?
To drive these goals?
Mm-hmm.
That is a great question.
So, you know, because this goal came from somewhere.
Right. Yeah, where did it come from?
Right. Just asking, just food for thought, you know, it's not for this meeting or anytime soon, but it's time, it's a good discussion point for a focus of
Right,
where our
and
kids
that
are.
is something that we've just started to implement in the past few years, is just more of that parent survey data and student survey data to help establish some of these school-wide plans that we do have to have. And then along with the school-wide plans, we do have to give year-end reports every year to the Department of Ed of where we are in that plans. If we make any changes, we have to have the rationale for those changes. And if we want to start over, we do have to just basically start afresh. But the parent and student surveys have become a large focus of that as well.
Thank you.
I have a question. It says on goal 3 to address the social and emotional needs of K through 12 students and their families. What are you guys doing for their families?
Actually, Dr. Mullen, do you want to share what you did today?
Well, I will go off of that. She said that they're thriving. Me as a parent with a second grader, with this past year, I don't feel like I'm thriving in any way in helping her. I mean, if it was up to me, I'm gonna teach her old school math rather than your guys' new math. You know what I mean? Because it's easier for me. So what are you guys doing to support us guys and having to teach them? Even like for those 3 days. It was like, well, you have to do these packets, you have to make sure these packets get in. But it's like, I work. Yep, the tribe closed, but I still had to go to work. So you guys wanted it, they had to check in, and it was just like, well, I'm not gonna check in until after 4:30 or maybe 6 o'clock PM because she's gonna be counted absent, or if I forgot on Monday night because I had something else to do, or, I mean, I just wanna know at what point you guys are gonna support the parents with all this COVID stuff.
Well, and that's a great question, because if there are better ways that we can do that, please let us know. So we
Yeah,
can.
well, even with my middle schooler, to be very honest with you, her snow day packets are still sitting in the kitchen in her box. She was just like, they're gonna call me absent, I guess, and it's just, I'm to the point where this last year was just hell, that I'm not even trying to fight with her. And so I don't know now if I'm gonna get a letter home from the principal saying, well, she's exceeded her days because you guys keep sending them home, because it's law or whatever. But I'm literally to the point where I'm not gonna fight with her. I'm not, trying to. So it says in there that you guys are gonna support us. How are you guys supporting us?
Well, today, and we had a lunch and learn. It's a literacy, my literacy coach is on there, and as a Title I school, part of our opportunity is to offer more learning, kind of what you said with the math. This right now, the learning is a literacy opportunity. Years prior, we offered a lot of math training. A lot of that years ago has been more on site. Of course, we've switched now to virtual in our setting that we've had. We have not had a lot of participation, but I will share with you, we're not going to stop because it's working. We've had some participation. It's phenomenal training, and it's a discussion, and it's just offering basic foundational steps of learning. And exactly what you said, Sherry, is I feel more comfortable teaching math this way. And what I learned even today, even with the reading, is if I was a parent listening to what I listened to today, that would help me understand foundational concepts, math or reading, if I was to able to take advantage of that opportunity. And so we're just trying to spend more time offering those opportunities for our families. It is available by Zoom. There is a link that I can share that shares some of the learning if you miss it. Not the entire presentation can be recorded, and part of that is privacy of people as well. So that is one thing that we're trying to do better from West Side perspective, and then it also gives parents a little time to give some input about our school, there's comments you'd like to make, even the comments you just made. That is part of that time. So we met twice now, and we've got a couple more meetings set up, and we plan to continue doing that. So that's one thing that we're looking to support our parents. I know as far as distance learning and packets and all of this has been uncharted territory for all of us. And we are all trying very hard to do the very best we can for our students to learn and grow. There is not a designated time at Westside when they're home that they're marked absent or not. And I'm just speaking for Westside. But I know that how it has been set up is that if something is returned, or if you checked in with your teacher, that at some point during those 3 days, we are documenting that. So whether it's at 7 at night, or 10 at night, or if you turn those papers back in on Monday the 15th, she's counting. So that's been posted on Dojo, that's been posted on Facebook, that's posted on our website. So, and I know my teachers are getting that message out. If you don't hear it from me, I know they are, because they're more clear than I am.
How long did middle school give?
And that's maybe elementary, we're elementary. But I will just be very honest with you, we're just, it's not a gotcha. We really want to help and support. And we're really looking out for the safety and the learning of our kids. I don't think there's anyone in here that wouldn't feel the same thing.
Right, I mean, and I understand all of that, and it's just to see something like that in writing, and then to add, and the families, it's just like, I don't know, to see it in writing, it's just a little, how did you help me?
Well,
You know what I mean?
I guess to me, that's like, for instance, today,
Yeah,
those are some things that we're attempting. Can I do it every day, Sherry? I can't do it every day. But we're trying really hard. They asked me, how can we help you? I said, I can have you have a training for my families. And it's really kind of a neat thing. And I'm learning too. And I'm a principal. And they're just, I'm hopeful. I'm just hopeful. Because as a parent, I think some of those strategies, I guess if I was a mom at home with young children, what I learned today, I would want to hear that. I would want to know that. So I'm very hopeful. So thank you for asking.
I know that as mom, that the middle school kids were given at least until Tuesday, because my own daughter emailed me on Monday that she forgot all of her stuff at home. So I know that it was at least Tuesday before she had to turn herself.
yeah, I mean, and I know like my high schooler, she's there, she is up and doing what she needs to do. My middle schooler is my middle schooler. And my West Sider, I asked her what she learned on Monday, and she came home and she was like, I learned if I don't turn my packets in tomorrow, I'm gonna get counted absent. And I was like, oh, okay.
It's very much so a work in progress for all of us. It's not the best environment or the ideal learning environment, but it's not something we want to replicate very often.
Yeah, I mean, and can you not call them snow day packets? Just kidding.
It started that way.
They started
that
with
way.
snow day packets, yes, so. I guess they just kept that language even though it wasn't a snow day. Any other?
On the Title VI application, I'm just going to read this off. Okay, thank you. On the title application, it talks about your pre-service training orientation there right in the middle of the page. It talks about the impact of district policies on American Indian students. What is that? How was that done? Or what is that?
What page are you on?
2.2
Oh, that one.
coordination right in the center. The smallest writing.
Yeah. Dr. Jessup or Steve, do you have anything you can share on that under 2.2.3, coordination of services and professional development?
And then for professional development opportunities, maybe for next year, we can have something with, directly working with Native American students. You see where she's at, 2.2.3.
I do see that, yes. And I believe the intent of that was that we would do some training, and particularly with new staff coming to the district that haven't been here, give them opportunity to just learn some of the things about the region and community that maybe doesn't sound like that.
I don't, because it's talking about policies. What are the Native American, what are the American Indian policies? Really, in the school policies, what are they? I don't really identify as us really having any. I think it's just policies for all, right?
So, and then one of the things that we started this year too, and it's been kind of done in piecemeal fashion throughout the district before, but this year we did bring in all of our new certified staff the day before the preschool in-service. And then part of that too, which we've never done this before, is we had all of the teachers here for an entire day. They worked with each other for the entire day. They toured all of the district buildings because we don't often get an opportunity to even do that. So an elementary teacher might never walk into the high school or even know who the high school teachers are. So we did do that. So at least everybody had a scope of understanding about what our district actually is, more so than we've been able to offer before. And that's something that we've committed to carrying forward into other school years because it's so important to give our new school staff kind of that initial foundation of what our school district is, and then be able to meet the different administrative staff, see our buildings, so they just have an understanding of what's happening within the district. So when we talk about something, it's not something they're at least not familiar with. So that's something we're always looking to strengthen too, especially for our new staff coming in.
That sounds wonderful, but it doesn't say it there,
You're right, it doesn't say it there.
I think we've tried to, Sherry, to really get our new staff to join that. The tour.
That bus tour?
The bus tour. I mean, we've offered it. It hasn't always worked, but I know you mentioned some PD. I don't know if that's something that we could continue to encourage us to steer that up, but I know that's some have taken up on that opportunity and what's been incredible.
Any more questions or comments about the Title VI application?
You said that was a separate, it wasn't included, right?
Well, there's no language that talks about, so there's a line in here that talks about a pre-service training or orientation, but there's nothing specifically talking about how we bring in the new teaching staff is an orientation to the school district.
But the budget amount, that wasn't included in Title I budget summary, and
Oh, so the Title VI amount wasn't listed on the top of the budget summary for title programs. The Title VI budgeted amount for this, or the Title VI grant amount for this year was $130,854, which wasn't part of that other Title I budget summary because they're kind of two separate entities. And then our Title I budget, if we use all of our Title VI budget, then we can go into our Title I budget programming to cover any other expenses that we may have for Title VI if that budget funding is done and used for the school year. So, and we have done that quite often, especially for summer school, to to make sure that the programs can continue even if the Title VI funding is gone. We typically then pull it out of Title I funding.
And then on 2251 on the tribal consultation, or description of collaboration with the tribes, it talks about planning meetings, and then it talks about parent advisory board meetings. When are those dates?
Parent advisory board meeting, they're usually once a month, third week of the month.
When?
They're held once a month, usually during the third week on a Wednesday.
Wednesday of the third week. And they're where?
Here, yeah.
In this building?
Yeah.
Okay. At what time?
4:45.
And then how are you communicating that to the parents?
It's usually posted on the website.
Okay. And then the planning meetings?
I don't have an answer for you on that, other than the consultation meeting we would have in May, which we have prior to our Title I application being done for the upcoming school year. And then our informal meeting that we hold in July with a couple of school board members, and then also that IPP meeting that's held in August.
So that one in January.
So what I'm hearing from you is to probably make that language more specific in our application.
Yeah, what is that, you know? What are we talking about planning? If you truly want conversations and planning, then people should be invited to sit at the table when you're really planning, not just, you know, telling us what you're doing, you know, that kind of stuff. And then I had a question about summer programs, and, you know, we always have to worry about the opportunity, lost educational opportunity, and then the COVID, and if people are sick, and all those educational loss. Are we going to do anything for summer programs? So
Yes.
like West Side having a summer reading program, you know, where they're a real academic program? Or is there any plans with our COVID funding or our CARES Act or our ESSER or whatever?
We're looking at planning all of those programs right now.
Okay, good.
Yep, so our typical summer school programs will be able to continue as they have. We didn't offer them last year, but the programs that we would typically offer during the course of the summer, everything is set to move ahead for next year again. Or this summer, I should say.
Okay, and then you have in your Indian project description, you have increasing school readiness, you have cultural identity and awareness, you have school attendance rates, and then you have increased graduation rate. Are these things happening? No. Did, like, you know, even going to the culturally responsive professional development, did that happen? Did that happen for our teachers? Or is that something that we need to work on?
So that's probably something that we need to work on. There were several opportunities that were presented to teachers last year. For example, the Rule of Quota project was shared with teachers in order to apply for those different opportunities. When anything comes through from the Department of Ed that's an open opportunity, we do share that with our teaching staff as well.
Because it's one thing to put these things on paper and make them look good, but it's another thing, are we really doing this? You know, and if we're saying we're doing this, then let's do this. And, you know, I'm more than willing to help out on anything that, you know, especially in that area it's not familiar. You know, and what are we doing, and this is our title application, so what are we doing to help increase the graduation rate of Native students? You know, we're looking at that. We know Title VI staff is doing a good job with the school attendance rate because they're getting them here. But how are we doing with these other two areas here, graduation and the cultural?
Engaging them and participating in the Sioux Voices program or activities to fundraise to be able to do things, to take them on trips, they do things like that. All of those things are a piece of it to keep them engaged so that they will graduate. So I mean, it's not directly to the getting those credits and finishing, but it does keep them connected and keep them here, and it's a piece of it.
Yep. But it doesn't say that in the service area though, you know, providing those connections. So maybe that's some area that we can work on. And then the only other thing in that application I had was Wanda Lee's conversation on the application correspondence.
So I can speak to that. We've had some difficulty some years getting the correct form that we're supposed to fill out that has the parent committee sign and list their role. And what has happened, I think what happened last year is we had the parent committee signed, but then we didn't list if they were a parent or grandparent. So then it got kicked back, and then we had to list the relationship and then sent it back. So that,
It's just an odd statement. I mean, why do you, well, anyway.
so that's what that means, because Wanda was wondering if anybody listed on that parent committee form was a Title VI staff or administrator.
Or if
because
they
we
were a
had-
parent.
Or if they were parents, because we hadn't listed the relationship to the signature on that form. So she didn't know if it was an employee or if it was a parent. So then we said what the relationship was and sent it back, and that was all that needed to happen. So, but yeah, we've seemed to have some, I'd actually reached out to the Office of Indian Ed last year to get the updated form and got it about 2 months after we had finally submitted the application. So it's, yeah.
So did our Title VI staff get an opportunity to have training?
Not so much last year, but the years past, we've done 2 or 3 different trainings.
Yeah, I know that there are a few virtual things, but it's not much. That's what I was asking. You haven't gotten any opportunities. I haven't either, don't worry.
No, and you were scheduled to go to the national conference in Minneapolis,
Yeah.
and that
Things didn't work out
happen.
for
Yeah.
Brian and myself, so.
I have a question on this 2.2.5.1, this description of meaningful collaboration with tribes. There's a part in there, like it's the 3rd line down. I'll read the whole thing because there's no period in it. So, SSD works with tribal leaders to understand concerns of tribal members in public school education and conducts 2 joint meetings of SSD school board representatives and tribal school board representatives to identify. Who's the tribal school board representatives?
So that's probably a piece of language that should also be updated, because that aligns with the meetings I spoke earlier about, in that in January, we have a meeting with three school board representatives, and then Dr. Johnson, can you speak to?
That language, the tribal school board representative is probably a mistake from a legislative law judge when we got handed down the rulings from the impact aid lawsuit that we filed.
So then
In there,
it
she
should be rewritten and saying, I don't know.
Yeah, it shouldn't be school board. I mean, it
Yeah,
doesn't
because
make
it says tribal school board representatives, and that don't need to be in here. I don't
That's
know.
the language of the lawsuit from the judge.
So, yeah, so that's where that language comes from 6
Yeah.
years.
6 years ago.
That had been.
But really, when we do meet, it's usually, this year I brought in Janelle and the secretary, and we met virtually with the stakeholders here. And the year before, it was Joe, because she was our JOM. So I brought in different people, just other people to come and be a part of this group. It's not a real big group. We used to just sit and eat and talk about everything, and now it's just a meeting and everything.
But originally, we met with like a board member from Enemy Swim and
Tio
Christina
Shazina.
and
Yep.
representatives from your office.
Because that was the letter of, because there was a lack of communication between the tribe and Sisseton School District. And so the administrative judge said you have to meet an extra time and just to voice things. And this was before the Elementary and Secondary Education Law Act was passed, and so then that brought in tribal consultation. And then it forced all schools and all school programs to consult with the tribes. But prior to that, the schools didn't consult with the tribes anywhere, or didn't even talk about anything. In order to help remedy and figure a better way of building a relationship and bridging that gap, that was why they mandated an extra meeting. So we meet every January. We just, usually in the first week or the second week of January.
So you guys met with Enemy Swim and Tio Spazina for the Title VI grant?
No.
Just in general.
That's just part of that meaningful collaboration with the tribe. So the Title VI grant is using the same language that has there been collaboration with the tribe. So this language is actually probably copied and pasted from that old document that shows how we're doing that consultation piece.
So, and now the next time that we meet, which will be real similar to this meeting, and probably the same things, but I won't ask them again, but we'll meet again with the tribal council May 11th. Is that Monday? But that's when our next meeting will be, just to talk about that. And so that'll be a presentation to them. So but we won't get into detail like the detailed things here. They really want to hear is just the things that are working well for students and impacts and things. And then in the IPPs, there also states the formation of a parent advisory board. So that's why I was asking about that. And Steve said that they meet as a Title VI board, and that's when he meets. But the parent advisory board has bigger ramifications as far as the impact aid and things. So that's just to give a little bit more of a voice for Indian parents.
Who's the Indian Parent Advisory Board?
Today, it's Title VI. We need
For
to
the
split off.
impact aid?
We need to split off and form a new one. And that comes back to some there were some impact aid language updates that were mandated in December. And neither Dr. Johnson or I were able to get a lot of input for technical assistance on what could be changed in their recommended IPP. So that's why the language is what it is now. And even now, Dr. Johnson is still trying to reach out, as am I, to get the technical assistance to remove that language from the IPP. So it's in progress. It
so
needs to be a
confusing.
different committee. We know it needs to be a different committee. It's just kind of stuck in language limbo with the impact aid office right now.
Well, you can still have an Indian parent committee,
That is
but
correct.
just don't have the Title VI. That just kind of shouldn't be like that. I think you should just have, that should be separate.
Right, and that's what we'll move to do, yes.
Because has there always been an Indian parent committee when you guys are doing the impact aid grant?
No.
So now they want one, so now you guys just kind of do in Title VI because they're,
Because that was what was the recommendation from, in the impact aid language that was provided to us by the impact aid office in Washington DC. We know it needs to be split out, and we know it needs to be put apart, and Dr. Johnson and I have talked about that already too, that needs to be an update, and I've talked. to the
So you
Title
need
VI
a
person.
parent advisory committee or some kind of, a parent advisory committee that deals with all of this, all the Indian education or, whatever else you need there. You really need a parent advisory meeting.
But
Yeah.
yes, that will be split out from the Title VI, the Title VI board, yes.
so Sherry, being that you're the education manager for the tribe, is there anything, or can you suggest anybody can be sitting on this board rather than the Title VI board? I mean, like yourself, or is there certain criteria to be on that board?
There's no criteria.
No, she just has to put it out there and start asking people. If I had to give you criteria, I'd say you need a couple from the elementary, you need a couple from middle school, a couple from high school, or, like that, where you have a nice little work group that they're not big enough to, when it gets too big, it's hard to work together, hard to get everybody together, but I just think you just really need to have a parent advisory that just sits down and it's okay to, because when you're dealing with administrators and teachers and everything, it's always, you're talked at. But a parent advisory committee means that you're talking to each other and sharing, and then your input, like the questions that Sherry brought with, brought up, those things. And it's hard to voice them to the teachers and everything right now. But within a parent committee, make those suggestions and bring them up. And it's helpful. It's the things that I'm asking here, but,
Understand everything a little bit more.
yeah.
Right, so.
It's the things I'm asking here, and when I'm looking at this, and they're the writers of this document, I'm just a reader, so I'm saying, what is this? And it's like, they can realize that where they need different changes and stuff, but I don't know.
So, yes,
Do
there
you
will be
have,
some.
so Steve being the Title VI, what is he, the manager or whatever? Did you have any input on this application? I mean, Does
Steve?
being that he's oversees Title VI, don't you think that he should have some input or something? I think he should.
Yeah, absolutely.
Instead of just having you, the superintendent, do it and then carry it around. Because I used to be on Title Board, and we used to, Delphine worked on it, and she showed us like what she was doing. She explained everything to us. But she did it, not Dr. Shelby or whoever happened to be the superintendent at that time. But she did it. She worked with them, but she mostly did it. And then as far as all, like you were talking about the signatures and stuff, I mean, we all came in and we signed, and she, you know, we had to put our title on there, whether we were parents or grand. And if we couldn't come in, then they would bring it to us.
Right.
I mean, so.
And Steve does do that.
So I think when you get into the signatures, then maybe you should tell them they need to put their titles and stuff on there, because that seems like that didn't happen this time.
It didn't happen this time. That is correct. Yep. Yep, but yeah, Steve does, I think you've even driven out to get the signatures with the application to have that in place for the signature.
Anyway, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the Mike Kushi that called. Or, you know, and she's not really Mike Kushi, but she is. And she talked a little bit about feeling like the impact aid funding was all about building buildings and all of that. And she said, where are the programs for Native American students? You know, she still brought back are we feeding everybody? Are they still eating cheese sandwiches? You know, and so that stuff is hard-lived in that for that school lunch program. The other thing, and I mentioned that she talked about the tutoring programs, but she also talked about athletic shoes for students, and she was really talking about the title funds for that, Title VI, is the helping families with athletic shoes and things, because that's a hardship, since that extra money is directly for Native students. She also talked about scholarship programs. So what kind of scholarships are we offering students? Are we putting out there to help students achieve harder or better or whatever? And then what kind of board trainings are we providing for, like, Title VI? What kind of trainings are we providing our board, our school board, and our Title VI board to better understand what the Title VI application and the purpose of that is.
So, and I can share that Steve does come in at different points in time during the school year and shares information about the Title VI program with the school board, so they're aware of those components.
And then, you know, I know that at one of the ball games, there was somebody asked me about, am I dealing with the racial slur? And it's like, well, not really. I said, but how are you dealing with incidences like that?
So anytime there is any type of harassment or bullying or any situation like that that happens with our students or anybody within that school-based population, it does have to go through a thorough investigation with the school administrator, with the interview processes, and then any consequences aligned to it that we're able to do in the school policy. So anytime a report is made to us, we have to investigate all the information that does come forward with that as well.
Is somebody communicating to the public at best that, you know, these things are happening? Because, you know, when it comes to me, it's like, I'm not doing anything. You know, I hear that, and you know what, I know the backside of being an administrator and knowing that you can't say anything, but at least, you know, acknowledging that this happened or it's being investigated, you know.
And I think an answer to that at any point in time is if anybody ever has a concern about something that's happening or has happened, if they want to know how it's been addressed or where it's been addressed, to reach out to the building administrator that would be most closely aligned to that would be the best course of action, so we can share some of that information as well. Did I answer your questions?
Thank you.
Yeah. And then I will share too that, so we did just do a building project West Side was getting a little full. Our middle school was getting a little full, so we did do a building expansion, but that was paid for in conjunction with impact aid funds and district funds. So it was a blend between those two funds that were able to pay for that project. So there was a split of both. And I honestly don't remember the last time prior to that where any impact aid fund has been used for any type of facility purchase or capitalized purchase that would have something to do with the facility. The last time impact aid funding was likely used in that capacity would have been for the Performing Arts Center, most likely. So it's been quite a number of years since there's been any type of impact aid funding that's been used for any type of facility project until the new middle school wing came into play this year. And then all of that information is also found in the packet, in the budget packet. Anytime impact aid funding is going to be allocated to be transferred out, that has to be listed within this approved budget. We'll have a budget hearing in May, typically at the end of May, and any budget questions can be addressed at that point in time. It's a separate meeting held before the school board meeting, and then the budget is typically approved at the July board meeting. So if there are some things that are brought up during that May budget hearing that need to be addressed before budget adoption in July, there is a point in time that just some time for those conversations or those shifts to happen. We do use some of our impact aid funding to help support our WASP in preschool, well, probably not our WASP program so much, but our preschool program. We do use some impact aid funding to help support that program as well. In the interest of time, and we can back up at any point in time, but the impact aid application is also listed in your packet. The application format has changed a little bit in the past 2 years, and that impact aid application lists the number of students within the school district, and then also the number of students that are considered to be in that impact aid count, and then that breaks it down based on the qualifications. So, for example, it lists that there are 403 students identified as living on Indian lands and 108 students that are children with disabilities. Impact aid funding that aligns with a student with a disability has to go directly into the special ed fund. It can't be used for any other funds other than that special ed fund. There's also a listing of the number of students that are connected because their parents work on federal properties, and then it lists the federal properties that are within that. And then each year we do have to submit this impact aid application by the end of January. So that full application is also listed on the district website. So our IPP is on the district website, and our impact aid application is always going to be listed on the website moving forward as well. So this year was a little bit different. Due to COVID, we were able to use our student count from last year. Typically, we have to do a recertification of numbers of our students within the district each year. This year, at the federal level, actually Senator Thune is the one that introduced this. We were able to use last year's student count instead of using a new student count for this year. But then moving into next year, we'll have to reach out and do a new student count again as well. So the application has the same numbers as what were found last year. Any questions on that application? The last components in your packet are our Title I school-wide plans, and those are by building. We could spend more hours on this, Dr. Moen, can you just give a brief overview of how your school-wide plan is developed, and then just some of the key pieces within it, please?
We did complete a comprehensive needs assessment back in 2017 and 18, and Dr. Johnson, when you mentioned surveys, quite a few of the surveys that you talked about, and I'm not sure what Title VI expects. Likely they have surveys to complete as well, but the parent survey, we do complete that every year or every other year. We completed the family-friendly walkthrough and used our data to write this plan. We also take input from our teachers and ask for input from instructional staff, and then of course take our data, the data that we do have available to us for our students as well to make data-driven decisions. Anyway, we met with the team. We took a year-long process to write this plan, because then our funding is based on our action plan. And so we did find at that time that math was our greatest area of need, and we were below the state average, and so we're working forward with that, and we wrote goals, and that's where we're at with our CNA process. And one of our main strategies is to build a professional learning community at Westside Elementary School, and so all of our teachers at that time went to training through Solution Tree, and we continued that process. And what that means is that's looking at what we expect our students to know, or understanding how they know, what do we do if they don't know, and what do we do if they do. And that has been the 4 critical questions that every one of our teachers have just embraced in the last 3 years. And we are now recycling a component and looking at curriculum and instruction specifically to make sure that our common formative assessments and our resources are aligned, to make sure that what we know we're teaching is making the growth and change for our kids. So we met actually just yesterday. So our plan is what we live by. It's not just a piece of paper. It's not something that we just have written, but this is what guides us, and we go back to it all of the time, and it's our professional development plan, and it's what drives our teams. So we've written it for math, but we also abide with it with English language arts. And probably the greatest thing that I've seen as a principal through this plan, and prior to being a principal, I was able to be the Title I director of this school district as well, is there was a time where we just did things for the sake of doing them. And this is something that's alive and it's working. And the key word professional has completely just changed Westside Elementary School. And so we're just seeing that change in all departments. And I'm just thankful for that opportunity and thankful for what's happening at our school. And we're just seeing the benefits of that. And ultimately for our kids to learn. And so that's where we're at right now, and we're moving forward. We've got some coaches. Dr. Meyer talked about that. Dr. Elka is working with us closely, and we have Mrs. Gilmore that's working with us. And we're just going to keep moving forward. The course is working, and we're seeing the fruit of that labor. So,
What is your monthly book club on the literacy plan?
Is that your teacher? Your learning by doing?
Oh, the learning by doing. The learning by doing book. That's when we did the first training, when you go to the PLCs, Sherry, the first training from PLC is that book, and that's the main framework of the professional learning community book. So we come back, and that's the book that we go through as a district. So every teacher goes through that book as well. So that's part of that process.
Did you guys have a problem with Class Dojo this week?
Can you say that again?
Did you have a problem with class dojo this week?
Not that I'm aware of.
You had an issue? Yeah.
Was it not working?
So we didn't know if it was just us
Maybe they
guys
did
or-
I don't know, sometimes it does just go down in that, from time to time, I'll see that there's kind of questions from around the country. My dojo's down, my Google Classroom's down, so it does do
Yeah.
that from time to time.
I think they did some updates on school.
Yeah, it does do that from time to time. But if you'd ever run into that too, just let Dr. know, so we know that we can investigate it,
Right.
or if it's something bigger. Mr. Drew, can you touch briefly on your school improvement plan?
So this was constructed and submitted in year 2. A lot of the items that were identified in the submitting process were related to classroom procedures and management. That work is ongoing. And as we move into next year, we're going to gather some fresh data on classroom management procedures and get that from the teachers and determine what our next steps will be moving into our new season. There were some items that were listed for expenditures in the CNA that through the course of this particular year in our school-wide plan, it didn't work as well in the COVID era. So, for example, credit recovery was not ready to implement the fall semester, so instead it was addressed and implemented in the spring semester instead. After looking at the format for it, it was determined that a more effective implementation of credit recovery than using the Genuity software-based credit recovery program was to have the teachers do it. So the teachers, the core content teachers that are providing instruction and assigning work are then going back with the students and whittling it down to the most essential work to be completed to address the standards, and they are running the credit recovery. And so that's been very effective this past semester. It did take some extra time with all the COVID changes to come to that system, but that is working. So we did not go through the purchase Edgenuity licenses.
So you didn't purchase them?
No.
Okay.
No, so that expenditure is nothing. We did purchase IXL. We did expand our use in middle school of IXL. And not just because we brought 5th grade in, but that was a reason why we expanded our licenses in our building. But we've also been using it across all 4 course selectives. Rather than just math and language arts, there are science and social studies components to IXL as well. So it was a good investment to purchase additional IXL licenses for that.
So how do you use IXL then?
IXL is a supplemental instructional tool for teachers to use. So it's not a primary instruction, it's not tier 1 in middle school.
Is it directed for a tier 1, 2, or does everybody get on it, or is tier students just get on it, or?
Wait, so it's supplemental. So the tier 1 instruction will come from the lesson plan of the teacher, the primary instruction. IXL is used as a support tool for that and to enhance the lesson. Basically, gaps that might exist in other instructional materials use IXL can often cover those gaps. Students are one-to-one with Chromebooks, so they're more easily able to access IXL in the classroom setting.
So there's not an IXL school-wide plan, or
I'm not sure.
it's just there?
No. yes, otherwise, moving forward, going into next year, we're restarting our seeding process, and next year you'll see a new school at based on.
Mr. Frederick, can you address your final thoughts?
Our plan focuses on a network of pieces that ultimately are areas that we feel are important on helping our students achieve success. And number one is knowing and understanding what is essential to be taught in the classroom with our standards. So right now we are in the process this year of doing curriculum maps, discussing that, and connecting our content levels. I'm very pleased with that progress at this point in time. And then obviously with that understanding is what strategies are out there to best use to make sure that our students are learning those different standards. So I have, if you look at the plan there, action 1, implement peer classroom visit protocol based on walkthrough checklist for targeted instructional strategies. That's where our teachers are going to pair up, and they're going to go observe each other and share different strategies perhaps that work and some that maybe don't, because it's trial and error. Standards that are expected to be learned. And that's the basics of our plan at this point in time.
Did you get additional funds to pay for outside contract time to develop your checklists and schedules?
Yes, we did.
Question, and I guess I don't know, I guess I'm trying to figure out a way to word it, but what is your guys' stance on the, I don't know, like having the political propaganda and stuff on campus? Like you see like the flags and stuff like that, you know, can be disruptive and, you know, maybe kind of offensive to some students, or you think of that as like racism. So do you allow those?
Yes, because a student's
freedom of speech doesn't end at the school door on school property. We cannot advertise or promote any type of political agenda as a school, but we can't deny a student an opportunity to express their views. Along with that, there is some education that comes into it that I know oftentimes that there are conversations perhaps with administrators about, do you realize that this is how some people are then portraying your thought? So we try to turn it into somewhat of an education piece too, that if you do this, this is what people might think. But by law, the students are allowed to express their opinions as well.
Even if it can be taken as disruptive?
If it would become disruptive to the school environment, that's where we can look at managing that a little bit differently, yes.
So, even if it can be taken as disruptive, I'm gonna look at it, well, not just me, but if you're gonna say that you can't take away a student's right to whatever, so now that weed is going to become legal, their freedom to wear them type of shirts in school is fine.
No, because it's
isn't that
still
kind of
an
the
illegal
same thing?
substance for somebody that's underage. So that would still fall under, so that would, do you see what I mean? So like, a
No,
student.
but do you see what I mean?
I do.
I mean, you're talking about being disruptive. It should be fair all the way across the board.
Or just taken out completely, you know, I mean, or not allowed.
I was just curious.
Yeah.
And it's a great question, and actually we receive that question often, probably this particular school year. And that's where we've tried to turn it more into an educational piece, in that, hey, if you're choosing to do this, this is what people might think in that portrayal. Have you thought about how somebody else might think that to be, or how that, you know? So we try to turn that into an educational opportunity too, in that, what are you really trying to portray? And how are other people taking that information in your portrayal as well? So we do try to have those conversations so they maybe have a greater understanding of something that they might not quite see.
And are you doing this as a whole, or just for these specific students? I mean, that could be even.
I can tell you that I fully understand your wanting to know more about it, because I had to deal with it at certain levels. But like Dr. Meyer said, we looked into some different things, and there's not much we can do about it, unfortunately, because it's not a fun part of my job to deal with situations that may arise from that. And I guess when I have an opportunity to visit with students and how those things come up, like once again, Dr. Meyer alluded to, I do talk to them about, the effect that it can have.
Do you have a plate? What about, how are you guys dealing with your vaping situation? Because actually, I don't hear anything from the high school as much as I do from the middle school. And they were saying that, well, they stopped the bathroom, about going to the bathroom for so many times a day or something. I can't remember how she said it. But she was like, but that doesn't stop them from doing it in the classroom. They'll sit in the back and it's like, oh. You want me to say something? And she was like, no. So I really hope that's not like on TV. Just
Otherwise, you're busted. Because that's one of the things that I'm working on is I'm working on a recent tobacco grant, but it includes a vaping. Because I've learned more about vaping here lately and, you know, everything from strings on a hoodie where they're sucking it right here and, you know, blowing it here, and it has this, the shirt is actually made for that. You know, and I'm hearing that it's, you know, getting to be pretty pervasive for vaping in all of our schools. So you're not facing anything that other schools are not facing too.
And I know that one of my kids came home, there were some vaping resources that were brought into an educational unit to try to address some of it that way too.
I've been busy with that.
So they're getting caught.
And it's a preventative
When they're
measure.
doing it right in the
too.
classroom in front of the teachers, and the teachers aren't catching it.
The thing that Sherry said, I think is very important to understand that it is a society across the board, across the country, concern. And anytime I deal with it in my office, I know the counselor and myself have talked, and our SRO and I have talked, and I really, you know, I'm not so focused on, well, this, you did this, and this is what's going to happen. I tried to talk to them about their choices and what it can do to them, and really try to do the best I can to encourage them to think twice about it.
So what are the consequences if you get caught?
They're suspended.
For how long?
What's that?
For how long?
Depends on how many opportunities.
Say it was just the first time.
First time is 3 days.
So it aligns with the same as a tobacco violation.
Oh, no, I said, aren't these things like for an age? I mean, like you can't buy beer unless you're 21. So with these things too. So how are these young kids getting all of this stuff and then bringing it into the school? And do their parents know? I mean, boy, I must be old.
It's surprisingly easy to disguise them as other things. So a lot of the vaping devices that are on the market are intentionally shaped like other everyday objects.
So they would have to go to a store and buy these and they don't get ID or anything.
Just like a lot of other things, it's highly likely that they're not buying them themselves.
Or purchasing it online,
Yep, I could do that too.
using a Facebook thing.
Having a family member that will buy them the vaping device, the cigarettes, the beer.
Yep, stealing from a parent that is.
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
Some of those sites, all they have to do is click that they're of age and they order it, it comes to their house. I've had that shared with me.
They come in the shape of a cell phone case, I mean, just pens, everything.
The USB
I'm just
drive.
amazed at the shapes that they come in.
It's truly difficult too because it's not a stench like a tobacco cigarette. It smells like, a lotion that they might put on their hands. So tracking it can be very difficult with, the disguising and like anything I could plug into my computer could look like the same. It's very sneaky.
Yeah, a lot of the ways to address it in the middle school as well lie in educating the child. So how can you make a better choice when you're presented with it next time? Because this is the choice that you made. You're being held accountable based on a discipline policy. How do you make a better choice next time? So every one of my students that I have disciplined for that has to sit there and listen and talk to them for 20 minutes about better choices when they vape, or about vaping, and how to not do that in the future, and what to do if they see friends doing all of these other choices that they can make next time. And at least this year in middle school, there's not a high number of students that demonstrate that same behavior. We're catching new students.
Yeah.
So.
And our school resource officer has done trainings with staff as well. So I mean, that educational point has been really helpful. You know, that has brought a lot of awareness because, you know, I've seen it, I've been around it. But what I know of it isn't, it's an ever-changing thing. And I think that, you know, it is very challenging when you're trying to look for it. So the awareness does help.
Yeah, staff are vigilant about it. We've got staff walking through the restrooms as often as possible throughout the day. On our info screens around the building, you'll see a QR code pop up if you look at that screen from time to time. It is information specifically, like a student can scan it with their cell phone and they can read information about vaping and tobacco use directly from the CDC website. We're trying to educate.
You're gonna have to take some extra donuts.
Well, I'm sitting next to him, so you guys. I'm gonna have first choice.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments or? Supper time?
This live stream is brought to you by Dakota Pawn and Thrift for all your pawn needs, Countryside Inn Assisted Living and Memory Care in Rossalt, where your family is our family, First Savings Bank of Sisseton. Use our online banking to save you time. Stilson Service in Sisseton with Marathon Fuels. Tri-State Water in Sisseton for all your water needs, water softeners and reverse osmosis right here in Sisseton. And of course, the Sisseton Courier, where we do more than the weekly newspaper. Thanks for watching and have a great day.